What's up? It is Friday, April 7th. Good Friday for those of you that celebrate. We have another Tesla Beat podcast number two. Excited to have Joe and Jeff, who are going to be regular hosts, and a special guest, Alexandra. So let's bring everyone in. Joe, how's it going? I think you're muted, man.
What is up, everyone? We got a fun-filled show today.
All right, Jeff, how's it going?
Good morning. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for joining. And Alexandra, how's it going?
Just fine, thank you.
Well, awesome. So this, I feel like it was kind of a slow week, kind of like Wednesday. We had no idea that all of this stuff was just going to spiral down, but we can just quickly just jump into some of these other announcements, and obviously, let's get your take on each one. Some of them obviously being JB being announced as to be nominated. Obviously, he'll easily get voted in just because he was one of the original co-founders. He was with Tesla for 15 years. I actually posted a quote video yesterday, and Elon said one of his worst business decisions ever was not starting Tesla, solely without just JB and adding more founders. And obviously, we all know the story behind that. Price cuts, deliveries. So there's just a lot to get into. So let's just get started. So this is kind of more of an FYI. So for those of you that want to attend the shareholder meeting, I've attended most of the ones in the Bay Area, specifically 2019. I attended the 2021. I think that was the Battery Day one that they kind of rolled into that. But long story short, make sure to go sign up for this. It's happening on Tuesday, May 16th in Austin. There's actually it looks like a raffle that they're doing for this, so make sure to check that out. But let's just get into it. So JB Straubel was nominated to Tesla's board. So feel free to just kind of like chime in. Let's just get some of your take. I know
I know Alexandra is like loving this.
I am loving this.
Something. Or it was maybe Amy. I don't remember.
It was actually it was Amy and me, because at the beginning of the year we had one of those sessions where we both said, "Oh, it should be JB." And it's actually funny. I had a session with Gary and Ross, and both of them told me that never, that's not going to happen. The girls just fantasizing and whatever. And there we were. So I did point that out yesterday. I had to.
Oh man!
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
It is. So I was really waiting for that. As you all know, I was beginning of the year doing a deep dive into the board when Ross had all his aspirations, and trying to lay out that we don't need a marketing guy on the board, but if really we need somebody, if really there would be a need, it should be JB. And I'm very happy that told it then, because I firmly believe it. To be on that board, what you do need is very deep product knowledge, and there's nobody who has as much as him. You also need to be awfully silent. I mean, the way Tesla is run, we have a spokesperson. He comes with his moods, and he comes with his enthusiasm, and he comes with everything. You don't need anybody competing with that. And if you realize these other 7 board members that we currently have, the other executives like Drew and Zach, and now Tom, we don't hear them other than at special occasions. And that's the way it's run. And so we certainly don't need somebody else vocal about it, whatever. So I'm very, very, very happy that it is JB. I think he is the perfect man for it. When I saw him at the semi-delivery event in Nevada, when he was there, when there were pictures with him and Elon and all that, I said, this is getting more and more likely. And here we are. Very, very happy to hear this.
I never doubted it. I always thought that from initially when he left to do Redwood Materials, it just seemed to me like there's no way they're not going to recycle Tesla back. You know what I mean? It just fit.
Yeah. Fun fact, I was at the semi event, and I grabbed that picture of him with Elon and Franz, and it kind of went viral on Twitter because Elon liked it and kind of saying, hey, getting the family back together. And I think it's I think Alexander brought up a lot of great points. He not only knows the technology, he invented a lot of the technology that's in, from the battery and powertrain side, him and his team when he was there for so many years. So, just a great understanding of the employees, and the leadership really have a lot of respect for him as well. I think it's important, for the board. So I think this is a great addition.
Yeah, one thing, one tidbit that I wanted to drop from the interview that I did with Elon when we kind of deep dived into like the real early journey of Tesla. So to be very specific, he had approached JB. They were the two original founders. They had, they had approached this company called AC Propulsion, and they were the ones who he would actually give credit to making the T0, which was the first concept car or sports electric vehicle car. And they had already had this idea to start Tesla. They had already had the idea to make electric vehicles, this concept car. And really, again, they got introduced to Martin Eberhard and the other co-founder as well, as a way to kind of like combine funds. But it was one of those things, before they even had the idea, Tesla was already in the minds of Elon and JB. It was just more of like, hey, you both want to do it. Let's bring both the funds together and kind of like, let's start this. So, but either way, I'm personally really excited just because I know what this is going to mean. And like it was mentioned, I think it was Alexandra, you mentioned it. You have to have a deep product knowledge. And I think, like you said as well, it's not going to be, they're not going to add someone that is going to be competing. So imagine adding another billionaire or someone else that is just going to, there's probably not as many loud billionaires as Elon per se, but I think this is going to just be huge news. So any final comments, any things on like what this actually would mean and potentially how this is actually going to change Tesla in a lot of ways?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So he's actually replacing Hero, which was a surprise to me. I thought Hero would have a second term. Hero came in 2020. The way I understood Hero's nomination then and his role the last 3 years was to help Tesla with that ESG topic. Not that Tesla itself has issues, being good in all these aspects. It's more about a communication issue that Tesla doesn't do it the way the corporate overlords would like it to be. And I had the feeling his role was, and I'm sorry, I got the sun just in my eyes, that his role was to smoothen this out. And that didn't work. I mean, let's just always say things when they don't work either. So I don't know whether Hero by himself had personal or professional reasons to leave, or whether they just felt, this was not the right strategy that I put in place in 2020 and whatever. So we're replacing Hero, who was a very focused ESG nomination, with JB, who is obviously, for me, the uber god of product here, right? He knows Tesla inside out. He has seen all the development. He has actually by himself now developed the whole recycling side of it. So we're obviously winning in the exchange. Nothing against Hero, but the subject matter is just so much bigger now. So the fact that it's a replacement rejoices me. I have, I didn't need a ninth person on the board, or I didn't have the feeling there was anything missing. But it probably also means that they're delegating now to the executive stuff, the ESG topic, and not taking it on the board level anymore, which is just as well. And just wanting to add that while we're on ESG, we're getting a new impact report end of April. That was also in the proxy statement. They're going to publish the impact report number 5 in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, lots happening. Go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say that I was going to ask, actually, what do you think? How do you think the analysts are going to view this? Like usually, like this means something. I mean, it means a lot to us because as fans of the brand and everybody who knows JB Straubel and what he brings to the table. But I noticed that the market didn't really move either way.
Yeah, well, and it's closed today, and there's a good reason why they did it yesterday, which is before a 3-day weekend. And I mean, there was an avalanche of news yesterday. Obviously, the proxy had a lot of items in it, and then we had the price cuts. I think we get to that later. In the proxy statement, there was something that confused a lot of people, and where I had some feedback from the institutional world, which is this new $3.5 billion limit for pledging of shares, right? This obviously is a limit for Elon. And so people were going to do their calculation saying, well, he's already got more than $40 billion of shares pledged. And so how can this 40 billion become 3.5? Does he have to sell again and all that? There was a whole wave for about 2 hours. Jeff knows about it because I was going to start to freak out, because you need time reading through these 74 pages, right? And find the nuggets. and I was like, oh my God, what do we answer now? And so actually, yes, while Elon has $40 billion of shares pledged, the underlying of it is less than 1%. So he has about $400 million of real amount, of loans that are against that. So 400 million when his allowance is 3.5 billion. So he's about at 13% of that limit. Is nothing to worry about, but you have to put the puzzle pieces together to get there. So that was one of those, oh my God, that's just another idea for Elon on, selling more shares, because I mean, the Tesla Q are really thinking, I mean, they're wrong, but they're really thinking that Elon tells the board what to do. While this one was a board resolution actually against the interest of Elon, saying, you know what, we're going to put a max here. You can pledge, but this is the limit. I mean, why would Elon self-impose himself a limit? I mean, there's, you really have to be spinning the wrong way if you believe that's the way it works. So they just said, okay, Twitter was an adventure. We don't want to be a board that doesn't react. So here is your max. And then going down for there, once you understood how much he has, like I said, I come to about 400 million. It's nothing to worry about. And I hope that by Monday morning the market gets it, because they were really freaking out last night on that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Jeff, you want to add to that?
I was just going to say, I mean, I refer to Alexandra to when she was going through the proxies and kind of firing off all these important nuggets. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I mean, Joe, to add, and answer part of your question. I mean, I think the analyst community are kind of neutral on some of these things, like, JB. I mean, it's going to be net positive, but I don't think they follow it as closely as the rest of us. But I mean, I think overall it should be perceived as positive. Former co-founder of the company comes back, but I mean, the JB we know, and just in terms of his impact and his integration with the company, was much deeper than that. The other question is, like, what does this mean for, future of Redwood Materials? Does it change anything? There's speculation there. So it would be an interesting thing to follow, in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think with that, let's just hit the other announcement as far as personnel. And this is also something probably not necessarily news. It's more of like officializing what we probably already knew. Tom Zhu, obviously, he's the senior vice president of Auto Effective this month. So I think, in my opinion, this just continues to lay the foundation of Elon continuing to set up this very strong leadership staff. Really, it's kind of like SpaceX in a lot of ways, what he did with SpaceX. Obviously, as he knows, he's had to kind of sit in the back seat a little bit with SpaceX. He set up, he actually gave up his little baby project, which was the Starship, handed that to Gwyneth, and she's been running it. And in the same way, with Tesla, we know he's involved, but we also know he has to also stand up another business that has been dying for these past couple of quarters that he's taken over. So any thoughts specifically on this? Otherwise, we can just, kind of skip this again. This is not necessarily anything breaking news per se. It's just more of, something that's just officializing what we already kind of knew was going to happen.
Yeah, I think the breaking thing about it, of course, we knew about it, but he's now officially part of the management team, so of the executives, meaning his stock movements have to be declared as well. He's part of the Four Musketeers now, if you want to call it, running the show. So it's Drew, Zach, him, and Elon. I found it interesting that they officialized it on beginning of April, which meant he didn't have to be in any of the disclosure documents of end of March. So that's just being clever by the lawyers, which I think is a good thing. But other than that, I mean, we're obviously all happy. Those who watched the Investor Day know him much more. Those who were backstage then afterwards gave us a lot more insight as well. So I don't think there's anybody, worried about it. It should actually also silence all these people still calling for Elon to be, more active in Tesla. There you have it. You have now an excellent executive on top of it. You have an excellent board member just joining the team. I mean, Tesla has never been as strong as today.
Yeah, the chess moves that were made like over these past few weeks have just, I mean, you know what I mean? Like if you would have looked like a month ago, you could have foreseen like these blocks being built up, but we don't think like how Tesla and Elon does. And like now to see these things unfolding and just to think of what they haven't revealed to what's going to come for the future is just mind boggling. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I was just going to say that I was always kind of a bit confused from the outside looking in terms of like, how are these factories being run and how are they exchanging information? How are they, how are they doing, copy exact where they should be doing copy exact? How is this actually working? And who did the factories report to before? So the fact that they've streamlined these operations and the fact that you've got a leader now that runs the manufacturing effort, that runs the Gigafactory, it's different than supply chain. Supply chain is different leaders in this business, Rosh and Karn. But this is, the manufacturing effort and the commonality. When a new factory is built, how does it leverage an existing footprint? How do they exchange information between factories? Are they going to build concurrent gigafactories at the same time? Well, now you've got a named executive, added, to that list that runs all that, and there's clarity. So this is it's formalizing, the quote unquote bench, but it's also, to me, answering a big question of like, Tesla's a manufacturing company, and who's leading that effort? Who's the single person? Who's the one throat that was kind of leading the effort? That who is or will lead the effort? And now it's clear. So I'm actually quite pleased to see this.
Yeah, the machine that builds the machine.
Yeah. All right, let's get into probably the biggest piece of news. Obviously, the price drops for the Model Y. The Model Y, the Model 3, really even, the Model S and X are getting cheaper than I think I've really potentially. It's been a long time since I think I saw like a Model S at 85,000. But so the Model S and X have dropped about 5%. So I mean, even to think that the Model X is 95,000 is just what it was. It was almost at 120,000 at one point last year. The new Model Y has a variant. The 4680 batteries most likely is at a $50,000 trim. Again, this is technically it's a new variant. It's got about 280 miles. But yeah, let's just get the thoughts on what this means, how this changes things, and how they continue to adapt, especially as the tax credit is going away, at least on the Model 3 and Y, or it's dropping to half.
I can say a few things. One of the things with pricing and gross margins is you have to look at reference points from prior to understand, because Tesla has built product, reported results, and where we know the ASPs and we know their gross margins. So we know pre-COVID, we for example, the 89,000 is the 89,000 on the S and X of the graphic. We know that the base Model S was 69,420. Remember, famously 69,420 at one point a couple of years ago. So what do we have? We have these COVID supply shocks. We had we had this, and this inflation happening at the same time. So you had a scarcity of supply, you had inflation, and it drove a lot of the cost structures up on commodities and as well as, direct suppliers to Tesla. And what they've been able to do over a number of quarters is take a lot of that out. And there's a lot of data. There's, the commodity data is public, and you can do references back a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then you take this point in time, whether it's 12 quarters of production. What does Tesla do over those 12 quarters of production? They do changes. Why are they doing changes? they're doing changes for a number of reasons. The predominant reason is to drive efficiencies and cost reductions. They're either design driven, they'll come from the Drew or the Lars team, or they'll come from the manufacturing team or the supply chain team in the company. But these changes come for a number of reasons. And so 12 quarters of, if you just pick a 3-year view, 12 quarters of cost reductions have also occurred over those times. So a lot of these trims have actually sold at lower prices than they're still at today. So we're still above many of the introductory, like when the Model Y was introduced. And of course, I gave you the Model S example. So I think you have to you have to keep things in context. Time has moved. Okay. Tesla has redesigned how these cars are made. Now there's levels of redesign that you can do, but in terms of doing event-driven, they're called event-driven cost reductions. They've had a long time to do those. So these cars are significantly less for them to build. The other thing that's happened over that time is their volumes have more than tripled. And when your volumes have tripled, you've added suppliers. When you add suppliers, you drive that competition and take the cost lower, and you've filled up your conversion level in your factory. So you have more utilization in your factories, and you have a higher number for your overhead to divide into. So what does this all mean? Tesla guided in for Q1. I don't know if they guided for Q1 or for the whole effort, basically saying that we believe our ASPs will be in this area. We believe gross margins will be over 20%. I would think if there would be a meaningful change, they may have informed us, but we don't know. But there's two ways to look at this. One is they have to cut price. So here, put your black hat on. They have to cut prices because cars aren't selling it at the rate that they need to for the following quarter. And there's also financial conditions that further tighten. I mean, we had a major shock in the system in mid-March with what happened with banking. The other way to look at it is Tesla's ahead of their internal cost reductions, and they're able to take more MSRP reductions because they know it's going to drive more volume and to meet their goals. So there's two ways you can look at it. I'm a little bit more in the second camp, which I believe they've got when they guided in the third week of January. This isn't a long time ago. And I believe when Tesla guides on EPS, and GM's a big component of EPS, they hit their EPS, or they slightly exceed it. They've shown that consistently.
I agree on all of that. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to say that, well, for one, I mean, it's such a smackdown. Like I think they can be understated, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just inevitable that Tesla just like has the margins to even make this type of move. And I think like that's like the missing piece of the puzzle that people don't get. Even if they drop their prices and match the margins of just the regular auto industry, I mean, the prices of these vehicles would be like, you're talking like another like 10 to 15% even lower. And they could do that, and they could still make the margins match what everybody else is doing. As it stands right now, they're doing this, and they're still leading the margin call. Like it's just insane.
Yeah. So let me add to that. First, completely agree with both of you. Raw material has come down significantly, as have logistics costs. So that's another cost reduction point. I completely agree with Jeff. If anything, material would have changed since the third week of January, meaning when they announced that 20% gross margin. I mean, they can be at 18 or they can be at 22. That's not what I call material. But material being bigger than that, they would have let us know. They will not run into this earnings call with this open subject and not having it. And the third one, you should always remember, Elon knows FSD is coming. With FSD coming, more cars are out there that are FSD compatible and that people can then upgrade to use it, better it's going to be. So while they have the production capacity, while they can put these cars out, he's not going to hesitate to lower the prices to actually, you're right, levels we've known before. We just spiked up during COVID and are now getting back to more reasonable prices again. So this is another nothing burger that they're going to whip up on Monday. So if people want to buy more shares, that may be a good window in the beginning of next week. But it is a nothing burger. I'm looking forward to the earnings on the 19th. I always warn the gross margins and the operating margins may, for the first quarter, still be tighter than we all expect. Why? Just because it takes a bit of time for this all to trigger through and restabilize, right? But I don't honestly have no issues with the second half of 2023 and thereafter.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to comment also about the prices. I think, the market, or really, I feel like the stock only really responds to certain things. It's going to be like this. If today was live, I assume that the stock would tank like 3 to 5%, just because everyone's assuming they're going to be saying, oh, it's a demand issue.
Right.
But I think that, Tesla is one of those companies where they are proactive versus reactive. And they aren't just proactive, they are proactive to probably a fault, where they are ruthlessly, trying to improve how their businesses run, and then also continuing to innovate at a rate that is unseen and unmatched in the industry, really potentially even in any industry we've ever seen. They are innovating at a rate that's just insane, right? And I think that's where Elon has said their product roadmap could be the most amazing or incredible roadmap out of any company that he would even claim, right? So I think it's just one of those things for me. It's and Jeff, you'd be the expert here, especially on the supply chain side. They're not going to just drop these prices unless it makes sense, unless it's going to continue to help the growth of the company. Thankfully, they have a ton of margin and room, but that's going to come with the efficiencies that are kind of being mentioned within supply chain, especially because, again, it's not like they just start randomly buying supplies the next day at new rates. They have been able to secure rates, and then maybe as things become more efficient, and as things become cheaper, they can even renegotiate those rates. Yeah. So it's one of those things where they can continue to say, okay, we need to drop at $5,000. Let's make sure that our margin continues to stay 20 to 25% because of X, Y, and Z. And they're always looking at, what that P&L is looking like, and making those adjustments in their forecast. But yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say that you had a great lead in, John, to the point I was going to make. Tesla's supply chain operates at a velocity that is faster than other automakers' supply chain. So what does that mean? Like, just put this in plain context. When other automakers, if they have to make a price move, they don't have price protection on what they have in inventory, meaning like, if Ford has to or GM has to make a move on product, they've got 8 weeks. It looks like the latest numbers are around 8 weeks of dealer inventory, and then they've got the own inventory between them and the dealer, and then they've got inventory in their four walls of their factory. So when they make a change, they have to go back and date a bunch of product that was built at a much higher cost structure, and they've got to sell it. So it's a double hit for them. Now, I know Elon said it takes roughly 6 months for product to run through the supply chain. When you're in supply chain, first off, that's the answer for the longest part in the supply chain. That's not the answer for the whole supply chain. I guarantee you. When we look at this in supply chain, we actually measure the area under the curve and what components are coming in at what lead time. And I will tell you that most of the components are not at 6. In fact, a very small percentage of them will be up at that 6-month point. And obviously this changes and fluctuates. So what's the point? The point is they have a faster supply chain. So when they do a price cut, they have very little product inside of their supply chain that they would have to discount at an unruly level. Everything else that's coming in, it's coming in, it matches their new cost structure, their new lower cost structure. So when they make a move, there's very little product in the middle. So this is a very offensive strategy that Tesla has. They know they have this. The dealer network, being subtracted out of the equation is the big part of this. And the other thing is how quickly they actually build a vehicle and how long it takes them to actually build the vehicle. All this stuff matters, and it's going to allow them to be very offensive when it comes to pricing and not have to deal with all this stuff that's in WIP or in channel. And if we want to talk about inventory, I could slice 5 minutes out of this call. I won't. Go look at the video from Herbert's video earlier this week. But there's a sweet spot for days of inventory, and I don't think Tesla's even there yet. I think they could grow inventory a little bit more and be at the right sweet spot to get product to customer as quickly as possible, but also keep up with the velocity of their output of their factory. So don't worry about the DOI number that you're seeing right now.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good call out.
Yeah, and one thing we had a question from the audience that I thought was somewhat relevant. Will volume compensate for the recent price cuts? I don't know if anyone wants to answer that one.
Well, their event-driven moves may have compensated, so we don't know. But volume alone, there's an equation for it. We'd have to go and calculate what that would be. But yeah, there would be an equation for it. We'll have to see. But if you look at the price elasticity curves and what total available market is at these lower price points, every $1,000 or $2,000 to go down, it doesn't go up linearly. It goes up almost exponentially in terms of willingness to purchase. So we'll have to see. But there's more than one thing than just the volume increases to offset the price cuts alone.
Well, there's a saying I like to say. It's so goes Tesla, so goes the world. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens after this. I mean, who else can drop their prices this much? As far as the competition, you know what I mean? I think officially the competition is ICE vehicles, not really other EVs. But when Tesla makes moves like this, I mean, it's just a freaking ripple effect across the entire industry. And I mean, we've seen it the last time, you know what I mean?
I agree, Joe. And I was actually surprised if you look at the ICE average car selling price in the first quarter, they were still up. I'd expected them to go down by now, and obviously they're not. And so it's going to be interesting because there's going to be a break point. At one point, this is not going to work anymore. They are living off these still increasing prices. That's the last straw of margin they have on those ICE cars, and it's not a big margin anyway. So the prices of EVs coming down, and you're right, Tesla leading the whole market to that, because the others have to adopt. I mean, how can you sell, and they're not, you well know, how can you sell a less compelling product at a higher price than a Tesla? So they will bring the market of EV prices down, and at the same time, these ICE prices are stuck at these high levels. And this is going to be interesting in the next couple of weeks and months. It's not going to take long.
Yeah, and I haven't seen a proper comp on a GM or Ford, because if you just do a year-on-year Q1 comp, they claim that their Q1 22 was plagued with chip shortages. So to say that there was growth from that quarter to this quarter, I mean, you'd almost have to go back to I don't know, 2019. I mean, you have COVID in the middle. You have all these different things. So I don't know what the proper comp is, for Q on Q. I mean, so it'd just be an interesting thing to study. I'd have to think that they're actually net down from quarter one 2019. These are things that we can look up and find out. But yeah, to compare them to a supply plagued quarter, it'd be like comparing Q2 of this year to Q2 of last year for Tesla, when Shanghai was down for 4 to 6 weeks. So
yeah.
Well, I mean, you can see it across the industry. I mean, look at Toyota, 9% down. You know what I mean? And I mean, you're talking a steady decline of ICE vehicles and their components versus like Alexandra says, technology, we all know, gets cheaper as it scales up. So EVs are just going to get cheaper, and you're already at that point. I mean, people love to say Teslas are expensive, but you are literally already at that point to where it is cheaper to buy a Tesla than it is to buy anything else. You know what I mean? And it's just ridiculous, as it stands right now. And that's before anything even drops even further, over the next 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah, especially now with the used car market, especially as more Teslas are entering the used car market, as owners are getting rid of their 2018, 2019 Model 3s. The cars are becoming more and more affordable, especially, it was at some point last quarter where the Model 3 was the same lease price as a Toyota Corolla. And I think that's where, again, we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, where I do think Tesla needs some type of comms team where they continue to educate the masses on information, not as an advertising mechanism, but in a way to say, inform people, hey, this is the best time to go get a Model 3. This is how it compares against ICE vehicles and other things. These are the incentives, go, right? And the problem is that it feels like a lot of times it's people like us, boots on the ground on Twitter, just like sounding off really, that are trying to be the ones educating, versus like, I'll talk to a Tesla employee and they'll tell me about it, but I'm like, why don't you just send out an email to your to the masses, or again, put out a couple of tweets. But I think they're probably a little bit too aware of how people will perceive that. So I think once they start doing that, people will see, oh, there's probably a demand issue, right? And they'll have to continue to educate people on saying, no, this is not a demand issue. We're just trying to educate people on that. But again, that's a completely different rabbit hole on whether or not they should have it. But they're clearly doing a lot more with their social, unlike anything I've ever seen. It's probably a lot to do with the fact that Elon's there at Twitter now. And so he's probably the one telling them like, hey, start, because the more that Tesla uses it, the more obviously they'll continue to build their brand awareness, but it'll help Twitter inevitably as well. So, but yeah, so I think, again, I know there was announcements last Sunday on the deliveries, but again, this is kind of like a weekly update. So I thought we could still take a quick look at the deliveries, and then potentially, if you can remember what you were tweeting maybe on Monday or Sunday night. But Tesla, produced 441,000 vehicles, 423,000 cars were delivered. This is a 44% growth as far as the deliveries go. And I think the big thing here was, what was most shocking and stuck out to me is that, at least again, I'm probably siloed a little bit, maybe. I know, actually, I can't believe it, 3 of the 4 people on this call are all in California. But I'm continuing to see the headwinds of this recession continue to just pound on, people locally. It's just something I see it wearing down on a lot of people locally. And this company continues to grow at 44%. And so for me, it was a huge, even though people, it was just a slight beat. Hey, a beat's a beat. It doesn't matter if it was by 1, by 2 cars, whatever the number is. And it was just really cool to see that. And again, maybe Jeff, you could even talk a little bit about inventory, because I think, the typical question is they overproduced. They didn't sell every car, but people don't remember that the way this company works is that they literally ship the cars, most of them from Fremont. Obviously now Shanghai and Austin are all, and Berlin are even ramping. But for the longest time, there's just like a huge amount of transit time to get to various places. So, it's definitely not fair to say they overproduced, and that's a sign of like demand slowing down. But any thoughts on Q1, or again, on the overproduction there?
Yeah, I mean, so first off, I mean, on the numbers, there's 3 different consensus views out there. Alexander and I talked about it earlier this week. I think they beat on 1 or 2 of them and missed on another. A bit confusing for how that's managed. But yeah, I kind of look at it just mathematically. Like, if Tesla did 9,000 more cars, does that materially change the company and its direction? In my opinion, no. But in terms of that, I was actually pleased with the inventory, pleased with the production. I was pleased with the deliveries. I would have been concerned materially, if it was less than Q4. Okay, I would have been a little bit concerned. But the fact that we're increasing and that we're above the 25 closest analysts that follow the company, I felt good about that. Just quickly on the inventory side. So in my experience, I'm not a huge fan of doing yearly DOI views. What we don't know outside the company, and what is confusing a lot of people outside of the company, is we don't know the aging of Tesla's inventory. People think that Tesla has produced more than it has shipped, 3 quarters in a row, which means Tesla has product, around from like last June or July. That's not the case. Those cars have turned, those cars have shipped, but we don't know that because the Tesla doesn't publish aging data, nor do they have to do that when they ship a P&D report. So when you don't know aging, you assume the worst, and you assume that Tesla is putting more product in the inventory. But what's happening is people are thinking in with respect to like, is this a stagnant business like a GM or a Ford with, where they've got basically a stagnant capacity view of their supply chain. So if inventory is growing, that's actually a problem. In the case of Tesla, they're growing the width of the production pipe at the exact same time. They're also growing the number of delivery nodes that Teslas appear in now, and that where you can go and purchase a Tesla. And when you're doing those two things dynamically, and the third thing you want to manage is called your wait times or your service level. And so Tesla could take their service levels and double them or triple them and take the DOI down. You understand that? So they can make people wait longer for product. But what that does is that reduces their sellout velocity, which increases their inventory, which is not a good free cash flow thing. So in DOI, you don't want DOI at 0. If you have DOI at 0, that means people that want the product can't get it and get it as quickly as they want. So you want to find a sweet spot for DOI, and you can actually, we could actually set up a macro and run this based on the number of factories, the number of delivery nodes. We could actually do this. James Stevenson's done a good job of actually analyzing this. Others have, and I support some of the numbers. Less than 20 is a good sweet spot. So I think the key takeaway for people is the lowest DOI is not the winner. You don't want this DOI just going out of control. If Tesla capacity was stagnant and delivery nodes were stagnant and DOI was growing very high, that would be a big problem as well. That's not the case. We have growing production. We have growing. Now, okay, look at the production for a minute. You have to separate capacity output and total production. So when Tesla starts a quarter, what is the capacity and output per day of their factories, and when they end a quarter. And Tesla ended Q1, we believe, at an annualized output rate of 2.2 million, which means they've added about 10% or so quarter on quarter to their output. So long answer, but volume, their capacity per day is increasing. Delivery nodes are increasing. You don't want DOI at 0. That means people can't get product when they want it. There is a sweet spot for DOI. I think in this low to mid-teens range is a pretty good spot. If it went up a couple of more ticks, I don't think that's a big problem either. And we watch what Tesla does with their capacity. I've always said that. And I think we're actually in a very good spot to again, minimize lead time and maximize output of the factory.
I agree with you, Jeff. And I think the one asterisk you have to put on this quarter is that they started delivering S's and X's to the rest of the world, including China, from Fremont in quite a big way. So you have that leadway, that logistics to take care of on top of it. So I do actually believe the number this quarter would have been of days of inventory would have been lower if that was already smoothened out, right? It's just a very particular situation at the moment. So I mean that plus the new price cuts on the higher end models, it just, for me, it makes sense. I know I have all my Tesla Q screaming at me that I'm completely idiotic, but there you go. And I do believe, while again, like I said earlier, this earning call may be a bit rough, just because putting it all in place can tear a little bit on margins. But from second half onwards should be smooth sailing.
Yeah, and agree with Alexandra. And one other thing to keep in mind, it'll be interesting to see. And I know we have estimates of what we think production was in the last month and deliveries in the last month, but when Tesla was coming out of the Shanghai lockdown, there was, it must have been 70% of the quarter was delivered in the last month. That destroys your cost structure. And the fact that they had that going on in Berlin and Austin, being quote unquote furnaces, which they really were, And then in the third quarter, they took that last month. I think they got it into the low to mid 60s. And then in Q4, they reduced it again. I think it was in the 50s. If they keep reducing it, I know Europe's delivery wave was jagged, but overall in aggregate, if they keep taking that last month down, and now they have this geographical diversity with Berlin being more ramped up, and Austin, this is going to help their cost structure. The logistics side of auto delivery, it's really going to help their cost structure immensely. So when we go back and start thinking of, well, what do these production numbers mean and what do these delivery numbers mean? I would say there's some significant tailwinds on the gross margin side. Obviously the headwinds are, these immediate, price changes. So you have to balance the two. But I'm trying to think of headwinds to gross. Take the MSRP changes out for a second. Like what has happened of late that would actually be a headwind? Because commodities are rolling over with recession fears. Tesla's actually increasing output per factory, so they're actually getting lower conversion costs to produce cars. So I'm struggling to understand, unless you were in the situation of a shortage or a commodity spike occurring. The headwinds to gross margins are not clear to me right now.
I agree with you.
Imagine the numbers if we weren't in a recession.
Yeah, and the other thing is they are increasing market share, right? So while you have all that, the competition is just going nowhere, and so the expanding market share, they're improving cost structures. Again, could be a little bit of a lag. Don't worry if on the 19th the numbers are not as stellar as we all hope for. Just don't worry about that. It's just a transition phase to something much bigger. But one thing I'm looking forward, and I have a theory on that. I'm sorry if I'm getting away from a little bit from the supply chain. Is groundbreaking of the Mexico plant, and I do believe that may be Cinco de Mayo. So who knows whether that's in the next couple of days and weeks as well.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, Alexandra. Are these upcoming catalysts, and I'm a little suspicious again when I saw the proxy, and I've asked you about it, but there's a lot. There's vesting events that are 60 days after March 31st, and I'm just like, I put my hat on, like, okay, what's happening? I think number one, you brought up a really important one, is the groundbreaking for Mexico. Is there a Cybertruck event? Where they reveal the product, coming in the next 2 to 3 months. Is the energy business going to be formally debuted, in the next couple of months? Meaning, like, here it is, we're going to start adding it to our perspective. Like, we're going to start, formally, talking about this, versus it kind of being the secret of like what's coming out of Lathrop. And so anyway, there's a number of catalysts I could see and Gary does a great job of summarizing these on Twitter for people. But I think there's a number of catalysts over the next couple of months too to really look forward to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Jeff, in response to your comments about the economy and anything has really changed. I wouldn't say anything that I know about other than potentially, again, people, pretty much the average customer being hit in their wallet right now, given this recession. That's the only kind of macro thing that I see. One question I had on the supply chain, I think I saw a tweet about this. As suppliers, let's say as commodities, everything else is going down. And let's potentially say that given that, prices are going down, and really let's, potentially say that even your output is partially slowing down because you're not receiving as many orders. Would the suppliers in their mind ever slow down output per se, just to potentially kind of keep the demand there on their side? So would that ever create a headwind for Tesla at all, as far as like supply chain? I mean, obviously they probably want to do this with Tesla because they're, they don't want to burn that relationship. But I think overall, do suppliers ever play that card where it's like, hey, we just can't output at that rate anymore just because we're pulling back.
Right. We can't keep up.
Yeah, not only can we not keep up, but more importantly, like, just not as many people are buying. And so they actually slow it way down so that then they can somehow increase their prices a little bit, potentially. I don't know if that even makes sense.
Yes, there are instances of this. And by the way, if you're I believe Tesla keeps their suppliers on a fairly short leash with this stuff and won't tolerate it. But this is why I say there's a little bit of a Goldilocks scenario here, and I hate to just sound bold up because I do actually go through a lot of bear situations on Tesla, but there is a bit of a Goldilocks here. So in a recessionary environment, commodity prices, input prices for raw materials, these are like, I'm talking about elements, raw materials, they do decline in a recessionary environment. So what's the other thing that happens in a recessionary environment? Does demand decline? Well, the answer is Tesla is riding this curve with what they're doing with MSRPs and what they're doing with new product placements like this all-wheel drive version of the Model Y and placing it at that price point. So what Tesla is doing is they're able to actually keep their demand up and predictable. So Tesla called a number. By the way, Tesla tells their suppliers what they're going, like Tesla's already told their suppliers what they're going for in 2024. They've given them an early estimate.
Right.
And when you're in the auto industry and you're looking at builds and ships, you have you know you're a Tesla, you're a supplier, you're an auto supplier. You look across GM and Ford, they're like, oh, I have supply issues and chip issues, or they have demand. I don't know what's going on. And they have so many different models inside of their supply chain as well. So when they forecast, their level of accuracy is much lower. So I'm getting to your answer. When Tesla puts out a forecast to suppliers, Tesla takes that material. They don't play end of quarter games, which is like, hey, I want to push all this stuff out on December 30th because I don't want to hold the inventory on my books. Because Tesla is basically building the same amount on December 31st as they are on January 1st. That's just how they operate. Do they have factory shutdowns that are timed around holidays? Sure. But Tesla doesn't really play this end of quarter game like most other discretionary consumer companies do. So there's no guessing. So if I'm a supplier, I don't have to necessarily, I'm going to slow down because I think they're going to slow down. Tesla's, basically hitting their numbers.
Yeah.
So suppliers have a lot of confidence. And the other thing is when Tesla gives suppliers a forecast, they only have to forecast across a few models.
Right.
And that's very important for suppliers of like, am I building the right mix on my lines to align to Tesla's demand? When you're dealing with, GM say, I'm going to do 30 different models and, Ford, it makes it a lot more difficult for them to run their supply chain. So they second guess. And that's where you actually run into these shortages. Sometimes these shortages are suppliers second guessing their customer.
Wow. Supplier confidence says a lot. I was, Chris, who flies our drone for us for our club, talking about energy, was just at the Santanella supercharger and noticed that they installed megapacks at the Santanella. And I imagine this is going to be something they're going forward doing with the new superchargers. They're going to keep the batteries, install solar, and you know what I mean, and just keep it pushing like that. I mean, this is like things that people don't even think of. I mean, Tesla just chess moves on chess moves. It's like, this is insane. I mean, these were megapacks that weren't there last week, and they're there this week. So,
they must know people.
Yeah.
One thing I know we have, I believe, about 5 minutes. One thing I thought we could hit on, or Alexander, do you want to say something?
No, fine.
Okay. So one thing I wanted to just kind of quickly hit was Master Plan 3 was revealed. They released a huge document. They did kind of mention, and obviously we know that there's about 3 vehicles, and I didn't put it in the box, but the 2 big ones that I wanted to call out was the compact car at a 53 kilowatt battery. This is the mass production car. This is the one that is really going to make it affordable for the masses. And I would say even really in China, I mean, this is going to be a big game changer for BYD and the competition there. And then also, too, the commercial passenger vans. This is something Elon's actually even tweeted back at me on just bringing out, something that can haul more people than the Model X. And then the bus. That was, I think, something that was new. Again, I didn't highlight it there, but any thoughts on this and what this means or any takeaways?
I just want to point out there was a footnote saying this is not the Tesla kilowatt hour size. This is the average what they expect for the industry in this category, right? So I had a couple of people going, oh my God, 53 kilowatt hours starting to build their battery models. Just, hold a little bit. This is not the Tesla number yet. We'll have the Tesla number, but it is great for the three products, right? The bus was a surprise to me. The van and the compact, obviously, we're expecting now, but the bus is a good surprise.
Yeah, I appreciate Alexandra reading the footnotes and
I always do, right? Remember?
Yeah. No, I
correcting me.
I do, because I immediately started doing the math on the 53 kilowatt hours. So if they build this plant with cattle, and the current Tesla quote unquote smaller car is a 375 kilowatt hour, and they're taking that down by a third, and then the IRA is going to give them another basically 1/3. They're going to get $45 per kilowatt hour on the cell and pack assembly. So where do you put the cost per kilowatt hour now? Is that at 100? Is it at 90? Is it at 110? Whatever you think it is, it's coming down $45, and then they're going to take the capacity down. I believe Tesla is going to meaningfully take the capacity down below 70 kilowatt hours. So if they take that down a third, I mean, I'm just starting to mentally build up the unit economics for this car, and I'm getting very excited doing it. So we'll see where it goes. And I like the fact that they revealed, like, hey, this is what we're working on, because a lot of the analysts are like, how are you going to get to these bigger numbers, 10 or 20? And it's not a spreadsheet, and it doesn't have all the numbers in by year, but it's like Tesla revealed, like, we're going to be working on the vehicles that consume the most amount of carbon footprint today, basically. And they're kind of working in that order. And that's why you probably don't see the Roadster on here.
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, especially with the semi, it makes so much more sense on like why they would, have obviously built the factory or build out the factory in Nevada, expand it now, because again, the amount of footprint from exhaust that will help accomplish and get rid of is big, versus the Roadster is like a very subset of people that will buy it, and who are just not going to be driving their Ferraris as much per se. But yeah, either way, I think I thought I would just potentially just kind of end it this week on that note. I think there's maybe a couple of other things that just I'll hit some quick news. I mean, we don't necessarily need to debrief it, but obviously Tesla announced this week that they're officially in Turkey. So that's a new market that they're in. And then I believe this is something Alexandra and I already showed this. They launched in China in the past week, really towards the back half of Q1. And then and then of course, Giga beer. So I know it sounds like a lot of people, I think Alexandra yourself, like, we have all of our European friends buying us with some.
True.
And then they're going to ship it just because at least at this point, it's just a collector's item. But so
I mean, for $89, I don't think it's to drink the beer, but it is beautiful. It absolutely is beautiful.
Well, yeah, definitely. No, I mean, I probably, like, even most of my all the Tesla Kilo, I still haven't opened one yet.
Me neither. You should actually see it. I don't know whether you see it it's on the top of that shelf.
Yeah. I don't know.
The glasses as well.
Is there like 5? Or are they like all back to back?
There's one, and then there's the glasses.
Okay.
Nice.
But yeah, either way, thank you, Alexandra, for being a special guest this week. Thank you, Joe and Jeff, for your time each week as well. Really excited to get this podcast off the ground and really just kind of sharing what's going on each week, catching people up who don't really have the time to follow it as closely as all of us each do daily. So make sure to give everyone a follow on here. Alexandra at Tesla Boomer Mama. Check her out. She's also going to be on the women's panel at the Tesla Takeover at Madonna Inn on July 29th through the 30th. So feel free to come see her speak along with May Musk, who's our keynote speaker. Always happy to have the Jeff Lutz. He's our supply chain expert. And So give him a follow at the Jeff Lutz, and then obviously Joe at SJV Tesla. But thank you again for tuning in this week and for sharing, dropping your knowledge.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Thanks a lot. Happy Easter.
See you next week,
Happy
Jeff.
Easter, everyone.
Happy Easter. Have a
Happy
great
Easter.
week. Bye.